Good afternoon, my name is Gino and this is Gino's show. I have here a very lovely young lady. She's going to have some discussion and she's going to tell me a little story. I never met her before, but the question is, listen to her very carefully because the story that she's telling is true. Okay. Please, would you be kind enough to tell me a story, Teresa?
Sure. We legalized marijuana in Massachusetts in 2016.
Yes.
And we now realize that a lot of young people, adolescents and young adults, are becoming addicted to marijuana because the potency is really high. At the time we legalized for medical marijuana in 2012, the potency for flower was about 10%, give or take, and there are very few concentrates available.
Yeah.
But since that time, in less than 10 years, the concentrates have really exploded. They're anywhere from 60 to 90% plus.
So there is not marijuana for recreation. That's something that 90%, that's very strong.
It's a hard drug.
It can really hurt people and,
yes,
and probably lose their life. Am I correct?
Yes. So what we're seeing with young people is they're becoming very addicted. I'd say 25 to 50% is what I've read for teens that are daily users are becoming addicted, and they're developing what's called cannabis use disorder, or CUD, and they're also developing cannabis-induced psychosis. So they're becoming psychotic, and some of them are having to be hospitalized in psychiatric hospitals. And if they continue to use after developing cannabis-induced psychosis, some of the studies are showing that up to 47% will go on to develop schizophrenia or bipolar disorder within 3 or 4 years.
Oh
yes, but especially youth are really vulnerable because their brains are still developing between anywhere from adolescent, well, all through their whole life, but up through age 25, the human brain is still fully developing.
I see.
And so it's very vulnerable to these high potent THC products, and it's very harmful. So we're trying to get some legislation passed in Massachusetts, and I know other states like Colorado are also working on it, Washington State, to try to, especially for the high potency THC products, we're trying to limit the potency of the THC because that's the addictive component. It's a psychoactive ingredient, and it's also the addictive ingredient. Just like with opioids, the higher the potency of the drug, the more addicting it is. And the same thing's true with marijuana.
I see. So that's nice. If all the states were trying to minimize the potency of the what would you call the recreation marijuana, I mean, there's no problem, right? Okay, the state voted for it, now they have to limit.
Right, now they have to really regulate it because that really hasn't happened.
That happened like
and to protect young people, that's the main goal here, is to protect adolescents and young adults.
Yes. You have pictures there?
I do. So I wanted to show you. So most people, when they think of marijuana, they think of a joint. So for example, this is what, brought a few pictures with me to show you. So this is what most people think of when they think of marijuana. And when they legalize, this is probably what a lot of people had in mind, right? Just a typical joint.
Unbelievable.
But nowadays, with the concentrates, we have what's called marijuana wax. This doesn't look anything like the green marijuana 5-leaf plant that people are used to.
And what do they do with it? They put it in...
They put it in what's called a dab ring.
What did they eat it? Would they smoke it?
Well, edibles, yeah, edibles are also a concentrate, but they smoke it. They light it. So this particular one is about 80% THC.
Oh my God.
Where at the time, as I mentioned, when we legalized just medical marijuana less than 10 years ago, it was about 10% was the marijuana. So this has gone up exponentially. This is what's called a marijuana vape cartridge.
But
so this is 90% THC.
My God.
Here's what a marijuana vape pen would look like. For example, this doesn't look like anything people smoked, in the 50s, or 60s, 70s, even 80s. Yeah, it looks kind of like a cigar. Here's a couple other examples. This is called butter. This is high concentrate THC, about 80%. This is shatter. So this is marijuana. This is 80% THC that they're using, as I showed you, a dab rig. Sometimes they call it a dab pen. They use that term also for the vape pen. And then here's an example of some of the edibles. So these look pretty enticing. These are only 5 milligrams each, but if you eat the whole bag, you're really going to be in trouble. Just to give you an idea, and that's really appealing to kids as well. So we're working on THC potency. We would really like to see flavors, just like for nicotine vapes, they've eliminated flavors in the state of Massachusetts. They're not allowed to sell flavored nicotine vapes. We'd like to do the same thing with marijuana because the tastes and flavors are really appealing to kids. They're usually sweet. They have really fun names like Purple Kush and so on and so forth. We're also trying to get labeling on packaging to say that it can cause mental health harms, including psychosis. We also would really like money set aside by the state for a state campaign to raise awareness and to educate people about the harms of high-potency THC marijuana. It's not the same marijuana as when we were growing up and we're in college. Very, very different.
Different. I mean,
and it's easily hidden. That's the other thing. So, as people know, marijuana normally has a real smell to it, and people can tell that you've smoked marijuana. These dab pens, they fit very easily in someone's pocket. They whip it out, and the teacher's not looking. They whip it out and can take a hit off the dab pen, or be anywhere, really. They could be at work. They could be anywhere using these dab pens. There's no odor. You wouldn't even know that they used it, except if their behavior started to become, acting really strange or whatever. Otherwise, you wouldn't know. There's no odor.
That's too bad, too bad.
Yes.
Young kids, I feel bad. I mean, everybody wants to make a living. The question is by selling something like that from 10% to 90%.
Yeah, and they also, there's been a couple studies released recently. There was one study last year in, hang on one second, I have it right here. I can just read from it. It was published in Drug and Alcohol Dependence, and it showed that early initiation of marijuana before 18 years emerged as the dominant predictor of opioid use disorder. So marijuana also, there are a lot of risks to marijuana use just in general as itself, but also lots of times people go on to use other drugs. And then, as I said, it says early initiation of marijuana use before 18 years emerged as the dominant predictor of opioid use disorder. And then also the CDC last August analyzed data from 2009 to 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey and found that among high school students reporting current prescription opioid misuse, the highest co-occurring substance use measured was lifetime marijuana use, 62.9%. So that's a risk factor as well for opioid use for high schoolers, is using marijuana. So we really want to raise awareness by this legislation, because a lot of parents and a lot of young people see marijuana as harmless, and honestly,
because they don't know.
They don't know. Yeah, they haven't been educated, and they've been told it's medicine.
Yeah.
But honestly, nothing could be further from the truth. It's not medicine, and it's not harmless for anyone under the age of 25 whose brain is still developing. It's very harmful. Very harmful. And so we're trying to get the word out, because the perception is that it's not harmful, and we've found over the years that youth, if they perceive something as not harmful, they will use it. But in cases, for example, cigarettes, youth use for cigarettes is like at an all-time low, because youth perceive cigarette use as very harmful to their health, so they're not using cigarettes. So we really want to raise awareness. Yeah, they think this is safer, and nothing could be further from the truth. So we really need to educate kids and parents, because parents who were in college, 30 years ago, it was not nearly as dangerous as it is now.
Now they go to college and they're probably smoking things, and their mother and father working hard so they can pay for the $82,000 a year for the kid a year.
Yeah, and also they found, I know studies have found, even at lower potency THC, daily users, there was a study out in 2014 in Lancet Psychiatry, and it studied young people in New Zealand over like 30 years, and they found that if they were daily users of marijuana before the age of 17, the odds of advanced degree attainment, like say college, of completing it was only 2%. So it really does affect your cognitive abilities. People also develop what they call amotivational syndrome, where they just don't feel like anything, kind of the whole couch potato thing. They just kind of feel like sitting around on the couch, eating munchies or whatever. They're not really, working hard and at their studies or at a job or whatever. So that's a real thing. It's not like it's not a joke, actually.
So what you're trying to do actually is not to, because the state already voted for marijuana, you don't want to just eliminate completely.
Right.
You just want to regulate it, and they can have it by recreation on a 10% instead of 90%.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, the state's already decided that. It's a done deal. There's no going back. That was passed in 2016, and that's here to stay. That's not going away. We're just trying to regulate it to help keep young people safe.
So they can understand, they get the knowledge of it, and it's up to them to realize whether they want it to function as they grow older, or they just wanted to kill themselves.
Right.
Or they would just say, forget about it.
Right. Actually, well, you actually bring up a really good point, because studies also show that marijuana use as an adolescent, you have, the most recent studies I've read show a three times the rate of risk of depression later in life, And if you're a user before the age of 17, a daily user before the age of 17, suicide ideation is 7-fold increase. So there's definitely a link to suicides, and out in Colorado they're already seeing that with the toxicology screens in Colorado. They're showing the number one substance found in the bodies of children who've died, I say children, young people who've died by suicide between the ages of 10 and 25, I believe, or 15 and 25. The number one substance is THC. So there's definitely a link to depression, to suicide. And a lot of times young people, like, they're being told it's medicine by society, and they're self-medicating, you know, anxiety, depression, whatever they're worried about, and they don't realize it, but they're actually making it worse because it lowers the baseline for anxiety, for example, and it worsens depression. So,
I understand when I used to say to my father, says, I don't feel well, I'm depressed. He said, come over here. Bang! Get out of here. Go play with your friends.
Yeah. Or go for a run, or
go
exercise.
For a ride. You got the bicycle. I bought your bicycle.
Exactly.
Go enjoy yourself.
Exactly. Much
healthier. Don't come
healthier.
over here and cry.
Much healthier.
You want to sit down in my chair and work hard so I can feed you? Those were the days. Yeah. Now today, their mother and father, they don't realize it.
Right, well, that's why we're trying to educate parents too. It's not just young people we're trying to educate.
They don't know themselves.
They're getting this messaging from, you know, there's marijuana billboards all over Massachusetts, and that's normalizing marijuana. Yeah. There are billboards that say cannabis for everyone, things like that. It's just not, it's not the right messaging, because people are getting the impression that it's medicine or that it's recreation for everyone, and it's really not. And parents really need to know about it so they can educate their kids, and teachers as well, because the key actually is educating kids even in elementary school, because by the time a lot of kids are trying it in middle school, definitely in high school, and it's too late because it's very addicting. They can get addicted really quickly. So they really need to reach the kids in elementary school to educate them before they've ever tried it, to say, you know, this is something not for until you're over 25. Even though the legal age is 21, the developing brain, the latest research from science is showing that it's at least 25 years, could even be 30 years for some people.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for whoever was watching this. It's very important because she wants to get the problem, actually is a problem, out, and I'm going to take it to another. Can
I say one more thing? Actually, I forgot to say that we really need people in Massachusetts to reach out to their state legislators and ask them to support these bills, and also ask them to move them out of committee. That's really important, because all of these bills, there's 6 bills. I can actually, could I give you the bill numbers? Would that be okay?
You can do, I'll take care of that.
Okay.
I'll take care of that.
Okay. So we need people to reach out to their state legislators and ask them to move the bills out of committee, so they'll be voted on the floor.
You have the bill right there.
I do.
Just say it right
Can I say them?
Just say it right away.
So H152, H153, H154, H155, H156, and H2100. Those are the bills that we would like to see moved out of committee and voted on the House floor and the Senate floor.
Regulated.
Yeah, so we can regulate.
Yeah. Teresa, thank you so much for your interview.
Thanks for having me.